Hello and welcome to this recording of Caseware Audit International version 15. In this recording I will walk you through our products Caseware Working Papers, Connector and Audit International version 15. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit something about myself. My name is Jaap de Waard. I am the Technical Director of Caseware Europe, the European Office of Caseware International. I started my career in auditing. I've been working for one of the big four here in the Netherlands, actually located here in the Netherlands. I've been working there for around 7.5 or 8 years, doing mostly audits of medium-sized companies, some listed companies, and quite some financial statement production as well. Then I moved over to Caseware Netherlands, where I was product manager for I think another 8 years, focusing on Caseware working papers and on the audit products. And now for the last 6.5 years I've been working for Caseware International as part of this European office, and very much involved with the Audit International product as well. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let me explain to you a little bit about our software and the overall structure of our software. So the big white square that you see here represents Caseware working papers, which is what we call the core software, the backend software, or the engine. Caseware working papers is translated into 8 languages now, I think, and it's used by over 250,000 users worldwide. So professionals, probably just as yourself, work with it on a daily basis. The process, the core process that I will show you later on in the software is the following. You would usually start with financial data. Now this can be a Microsoft Excel, a trial balance exported into Microsoft Excel, financial data in ASCII format, in XBRL format, and you would then import that into working papers. We have quite an extensive list of accounting packages for which we've developed a dedicated import. So if the package that you use or your clients use is in that list, you can even more easily than the import just suck in those databases, and then we'll insert the transactions into working papers. So once you have that financial data imported into working papers, the next thing you need to do is standardize the trial balance or the financial data. In most countries, companies are free to create account numbers how they want. So any company can have any trial balance and use any account number. In order to generate or to create an electronic file that makes sense, we need to classify those accounts, and we can do that by linking the client's trial balance, the client's account numbers to our mapping. And a mapping is, well, you can either compare it with a very extensive chart of accounts, or you can envision it as a trial balance income statement coding system with all the line items. So by linking the account to one of the mappings, we can classify the account, and then we can interpret whether it's a receivables, fixed assets, whatever. And with that, we're able to build up a electronic audit engagement file for you. Now, some of you watching this video might be from a country where you have a national chart of accounts. That makes things a whole lot easier. If you are a user in one of these countries, just know that we've created a process called AutoMap, and that would allow you to just import the trial balance, hit the AutoMap button, and through a definition that we already have, we will classify the accounts for you based on your national chart of accounts. So then you don't have to do this manual process. If you are doing this manual process, just be assured that you only need to do it once per engagement file. When you do a year-end close on your engagement file, that linkage between the trial balance and the mappings will be saved. You don't have to redo it. Another thing is that if you have a lot of clients that have the same trial balance, or a very similar trial balance, you can reuse any linkage that you've done. Please get in touch with us and we'll explain to you how you can do that. Okay, so you have your trial balance, you've imported it, you've done your mapping. Based on that, Working Papers already gives you the following features. You get a very easy to work with document manager, in which is like a Windows folder structure, and through the document manager you can build up your own structure. You can add supporting documents, Word, Excel, PDF, any kind of document, and organize it to your liking. You can do sign-offs on your documents, create references, etc. That's already a very, very powerful feature. Based on the mapping, we're able to give you lead sheets. So we now can interpret which accounts are classified as what. So based on that, you will get lead sheets for your audit sections. Or we could even create a trial balance that's grouped similar to your balance sheet. So that's also something you get from just using Caseware Working Papers. Working with the trial balance, you're able to post journal entries. It could be adjusting journal entries, reclassifying journal entries, or it could be consolidation, eliminating entries. It will be shown in a lot of detail later on in the presentation. Consolidation is also a big feature. Usually for audit purposes, I think you would do consolidation based on trial balances, not necessarily on the full financial statement. But then you could use the mapping, let's say the aggregation levels, the line items in the balance sheet, and your consolidation would be done on that level. So even if different subsidiaries have a different chart of accounts, different trial balances, that really doesn't matter. We consolidate at this standardized mapping or grouping level. Working Papers also has very extensive security and user management. You configure that to limit rights of some users. If you are watching this as a first-time user or just getting acquainted with Working Papers, I would advise you not to right away dive into the security because you might set it too rigid and it might actually limit your users. So it's probably a better use case or better best practice to not use the security in the first year. Get to understand the software, and once you know all the features, you can decide which features should not be available to which users. Then finally, but very, very important, is SmartSync, which is also part of Caseware Working Papers. With SmartSync, you're able to work together independent of location, as long as you are connected to the internet. I think that's the best summary. So I could have one file being here, someone else could have a synchronized copy of the same file, and the changes will synchronize between our two files, so we're both up to date as long as we are connected to the internet. If you are not connected to the internet, you can work offline, and once you have a connection, you can just synchronize your changes, so you don't need to be online all the time. So when you're over at the client and it's in a area where they have bad reception, you can just work offline, and then when you get online, synchronize your changes. SmartSync is also very relevant when you're visiting clients. Let's say you have an audit team, you're going to a client with 3 or 4 people. Then you could use SmartSync to build. So you would have to have a small local network. You can do that with a hub, or you have all these great external drives with built-in routers right now. If you have a local network, then you can use SmartSync as well. So your 4 team members will each have their own synchronized copy, but because you're in a network and you have SmartSync, all the changes will be synchronized amongst the different users. That's a great way to work. The synchronization is real time because you don't use any 3G or you don't have to be connected to the internet because you just have your local network. So you will have the full local processing power of your laptop, but at the same time your user experience is as if you're working in the same file. That's also quite an easy use case, an easy way to get started with Caseware SmartSync. It won't be part of this presentation, but if you have any further questions, please get in touch with us. We're happy to explain that in a bit more detail to you. Okay, so this is just Working Papers. If you start with only Working Papers, you already get a very complete feature set, and it's already very powerful. We can extend that, and then we can add 2 add-on modules. One is IFRS Financials, and the other one is Audit International. And these are, well, especially IFRS Financials is an example of the financial statement production that we can do with Caseware working papers. IFRS Financials is our international template. It would give you a full financial statement with the balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, all the notes and disclosures based on IFRSs. But in different jurisdictions, we will have different local financial statement templates available as well. And those will meet the local requirements, usually deal with filing, etc. As well. So that's just, let's say, product group. What we will focus on in this presentation is the audit, which is the Caseware Audit International template, represented by this box. What the audit template adds to working papers is a very clear audit workflow, checklists that can be easily modified, work programs that can be tailored either at the firm level or the engagement level, risk analysis worksheets, and worksheets on controls if you do larger audits. So we will be spending a lot of time in this presentation or this recording on the audit specific documents, but we will also touch upon the Caseware working paper features, because in the end it's that's the whole solution, using both features in one engagement file. Okay, that's the overview. Let's go into a bit more detail on the audit, and then we'll go over to the actual software. The content in the Audit International template is based on the IFAC guide for SME audits, or, well, you can see the full name on screen. The author of this guide is actually from Canada, and this guide was written by the CACA, published by IFAC. In addition to this guide, which is still quite high level, CICA has published a toolkit with more detailed forms, worksheets, work programs based on the SME guide. And this toolkit was actually written by the same author as the guide. And it's this toolkit with all these detailed forms on which we have based the content of our Audit International template. So it always requires a bit of explanation, but the big benefit for you is that you can clearly see the resemblance. The terminology, of course, is completely consistent. If you know the guide, you might also know there's two case studies that come with it, and our demo file is actually the case study of debt deferences, but then done within Audit International. So if you're new to the tool, I would really recommend you to use the guide, go through the guide as your methodology, and in parallel go through our software, and you will clearly see the resemblance. You could also use the debt deference case study and then pick up our demo file, and you would very clearly see how that's implemented in our software. Okay, so that's on the content. Now, the next thing is what we feel is one of the major challenges for any mid-tier audit firm. At one hand, you have to be compliant with standards, and ISOs have been changed. We got the Clarity ISOs. You might have quality reviews from your network or association, or you might have your local peer review from the National Institute, and a lot is changing in that area. Things are becoming more strict, more precise. So you have to be compliant with that on one hand. At the same time, I think your market circumstances are not that easy as well. So there's a lot of pressure on fees, and especially when you do a lot of smaller audits, or maybe simpler audits is a better word. IFAC clearly says that an audit is an audit, and if it's an audit, the ISOs have to be applied. So how do you make sure you're compliant and still are efficient and meet your budget for these simpler audits? I think that's a big challenge for many mid-tier audit firms right now. And that makes it an issue for us as well. Now, developing software for audits, we've been doing a lot of thinking how we could help audit firms with this challenge. And hopefully the solution that we came up with that I will be showing you during this presentation works for you. To give you a little bit, to explain what we've done over the last years, I just have one more slide that I would like to walk you through. So let's say this bar here represents audit engagements. So at one side you have the really big, let's say listed engagements, and then you have the small SME engagements and maybe even non-ISA engagement depending on your country or your jurisdiction. Your local national institute might not yet have adopted ISAs. Now, because an audit is an audit, we cannot say this is a small audit, this is a large audit. Well, maybe for the exception of listed company audits, but it's a gradient thing. So we've been looking for a solution to still give you this flexibility, but at the same time make it more efficient. And to explain that to you, I have to talk a little bit about the history of our product. If we pick 2009 as a baseline, our product was clearly focused on SME, based on the IFRS SME guide. But after that, we got the first change, which was the clarity content. And that made the ISAs a lot clearer, but there were also a lot of shells. So the impact on our product was that it extended. We had more areas like going concern, auditors, experts, well, these very typical clarity ISA areas, I would say. So that extended our product and made it more formal and more extensive, more towards larger audits. Then later on, we implemented a feature to deal with controls, testing of controls environment, and that was also something that was more for the larger audits. So again, it added more documents to our tool. Then we implemented the management letter, which is also for smaller audits, but still the product kept on growing, which is good from a compliance point of view, but might not make it easier to use for smaller audits. Last year we added a lot of content that's very specific for larger audits. So that's based on a lot of content for group audits. So well, you can see that this trend that the product just got more extensive. So as a counteraction, we also looked for how can we create automation that would still make our product very efficient for small audits. And that's illustrated by these green boxes here. Basically, we were looking for processes that we could automate, and we call all those features, we kind of the umbrella name for it is optimizer. So we have a couple of things within the optimizer. It can delete procedures based on your risk assessment. It can delete procedures and documents based on the characteristics of your engagement file. So that's just to make it more efficient. Now, Audit 15, I think we made a big step to make it easy to use in relatively small engagements. We've added two major features. One is OneForm, the other is Profiles. OneForm is an audit memo. We've done a lot of research, and firms that have a large number of small or simple audits usually prefer to work with audit memos instead of full checklists or worksheets. So instead of going through all those boxes and ticking all these boxes in a checklist, for them it's a lot more efficient to have one memo and to document their audit evidence and their understanding of the entity as a narrative. So we've taken that concept and we created this OneForm audit memo that would allow you to document your audit work freeform as a narrative. But we made it in such a way that you can choose per area if you want to use a narrative or the full checklist. So let's say you have a small audit, but there are some areas that are high risk. For those high risk areas, you could decide to use the full form. And that also helps with this gradient. So at one side of the spectrum, if you have only a very simple audit, you could probably only do the one form. If you have an audit that's kind of in the middle, you would use the one form, but then for more areas you would probably use the full checklist or the full worksheet. So in that way we give you the flexibility. One form is the framework, but it's up to you to pick and choose the detailed documents, the full worksheets that you want to use for your particular engagement. The other big feature is profiles. So now we have a Audit International template that is also a repository of all possible work programs and checklists, which is quite extensive. It is compliant, so it deals with almost each and every situation you can encounter. But because you probably don't need all of those documents in your engagement, with profiles you can select what should be the starting point for your new engagement file. So if you pick a smaller profile, you will, out of these, let's say 200 documents that are in the template, you only get 50. That's your starting point, and then you can easily add documents that you need from the template into your engagement file. So your starting point is a lot smaller, and then you add to it. If you have a large audit, you would probably start with a larger profile and then maybe even delete documents that are not relevant. So profiles really gives you a lot more flexibility and gives you a starting point that matches a lot better with your specific engagement. So hopefully these two combined with the optimizer give you a lot more efficiency and make it really efficient to use Audit International also for smaller engagements. Okay. And I think that's enough PowerPoint. Let's move over to the actual software.